a love story of an Australian Christian girl who fell in love with a Saudi Muslim man, then converted to Islam, married her Arab lover, and traveled with him to the Islamic world. It was written in English and translated into Arabic by Dr. A. Ahmed. Copyright. All rights are reserved. No part of this book may be reproduced, stored in the travel system, or transmitted in any form or by any means without the prior written permission of the author except by a reviewer, who may quote brief paragraphs in a review to be printed in a newspaper, journal, magazine, or a school journal. All characters in this story are fictitious and any resemblance to real people, living or dead, is purely coincidental. Chapter 21. Divine Exodus from Hell of Islam. The white girl Irshad sits in front of her tent and looks at her 6 little children with many hot tears welling up in her beautiful eyes. She feels very hot from the scorching sun, and the Islamic burqa wraps her body from head to toe. She can see her 6 children through a small hole in her niqab, which is no less small than the eye of a needle. She suffers from a strong suicidal mood. She is deeply immersed in her suicidal thoughts, which has been haunting her for several months. She tried many times to end her life, but she was always prevented by the fear of leaving her children orphans and begging for food on the streets of Kandahar city. If not for her children, she would have shot herself in the head, ended everything, and got out of her hellish life in the Islamic world. Irshad knows for sure that her 3 young sons will grow up as terrorists and blow their bodies to shreds for the holy cause of Islamic jihad. It is also expected that her 3 daughters will be forced to marry Taliban mujahideen and give birth to more terrorists. To avoid these unpleasant consequences, Irshad decided to return to Australia, where she was born and raised. Unfortunately, her Australian embassy in Islamabad city in Pakistan refused her a passport because she had been associated with Muslim terrorists for many years. The only escape for that Irshad thought of was to end her life and live that miserable and hellish life. She even entertained the idea of killing her own children with her. Irshad could not believe that a day would come in her life when she would turn to such an inhumane sort of trying to kill her children. Even animals do not kill their young. The white girl knows in her native country that all care and education will be provided for her 6 children so that they will grow up as good citizens. In Afghanistan, her sons will not avoid their fate of being raised as terrorists and her daughters being illiterate and marrying Taliban fighters. The Australian girl recalled how her parents and friends tried to prevent her from marrying an immigrant Muslim boy. At that time, she was blinded by her intense love for her Arab classmate. In those days, she would see her Muslim friend as an angel who came down from heaven to give her the love and joy she longed for. She liked his reddish Arabic complexion and his height. Irshad enjoyed hearing his accent when he spoke English. She liked the way he spoke and walked. She found her lover Mustafa very polite and loving. Everything she loves in a man, she found in her Arab boyfriend. He became her English lover Romeo, and she was his British lover Juliet, or her crazy lover Case, and she was his Arab beloved Layla. In a short time, he became her idol and she worshipped him. Everything he wanted her to do, she did for him. He made her abandon her family, friends, and country, and she traveled with him to his homeland in Saudi Arabia. She even left her Christian religion and converted to his religion, Islam. In the end, her Arab friend Mustafa changed her name from Susan to Irshad and married her and took her to his home country, the Kingdom of Saudi Arabia. However, long after she was released from the infernal woman's prison in Kandahar city and resided with her six children for a few months in that tiny tent that was smaller than a phone booth and dirtier than a public toilet in the said valley, the Australian widow Irshad Shammari witnessed the airstrikes on the Mujahideen camps carried out by the NATO forces jointly with the US and British air forces. Everyone she knows in those camps has either been blown to pieces by those huge bombs, lost a leg or a hand, or a gun deaf and dumb. Every heart and ten in the camps caught fire. Those paralyzed by the bombs were forced to flee into the mountains to hide from the soon to come NATO forces. Irshad and her six children are among those who escaped safely from the burning Mujahideen camps. The survivors felt as if they were fleeing with the Prophet Lot and his family from the fires of Sodom and Gomorrah, or fleeing from God's punishment on the day of resurrection. For the first time after 11 years, the Australian girl Suzanne Peterson found herself and her children free. But their freedom is surrounded by danger from above and below. The remaining Mujahideen families were scattered everywhere. They are without any protection or any means of transportation. The foreign planes identified and destroyed every vehicle carrying the Mujahideen and their families. Therefore, the only way to escape is to use animals like donkeys and horses to travel from one place to another or to walk on foot. Under heavy aerial bombardment and constant danger, the widow Irshad and her six children somehow managed to cross the border and enter the Swat Valley in Pakistan. The Australian girl hid her identity and decided not to mention that her late husband was one of those 19 terrorists who hijacked and crashed passenger planes in the New York Twin Towers and killed about 3,000 innocent people. Nor did she say that she was born and raised in Sydney, Australia. She learned a good lesson from her previous mistake by revealing her identity and association with Mujahideen terrorists in her interview at the Australian Embassy in Islamabad city in Pakistan. She even concealed her appearance as a Western foreign blonde woman through the Islamic veil. No one can identify any of the Taliban, Al Qaeda, Mujahideen women through the ugly Islamic burqa that hides her like a coffin from head to toe. The human female is God's most beautiful creation, but the misogynistic teachings of Islam made her a fearsome ghost. Accordingly, everyone who saw Irshad thought she was an Afghan woman. The journey from Afghanistan to Pakistan is the hardest and most dangerous journey that humans can take. It lasted several days, and Irshad's children fell ill several times. It is another divine miracle that the Australian widow and her children were able to cross those mountains and valleys without losing any of her six young children. Once they reached Swat Valley, the white mother and her six children joined the Afghani refugee camps. Irshad deliberately changed her name to Iman and her last name to Atta. She does not want anyone to know her former name and her relationship with her Arab terrorist husband, Mustafa Shammari. She told the UN authorities in the refugee camps that her husband died during air raids on the Mujahideen camps in Kandahar city in Afghanistan. Moreover, she hid her native Australian and claimed that she was born and brought up in the USA. The UN authorities believed her words and did not attempt to verify her claim. In fact, Iman Atta is the name of the second Muslim wife that her Saudi husband Mustafa married while she was staying with him in his home country of Saudi Arabia. Out of sympathy, the kind-hearted foreign widow Irshad decided to honor the innocent minor Saudi girl who died while giving birth with her infant child. It was her evil husband who prevented her from going to the hospital and having a cesarean operation due to her inability to deliver naturally at the young age of 15. The Australian white foreign woman Irshad Shammari, who became the American mother Iman Atta, expected that the refugee camp authorities would keep them temporarily and then send them for resettlement in a Western country. She knew that her late Arab husband and his Saudi family had arrived in Australia as resettled refugees from Jordan. So Iman believed that every refugee would end up in a Western country. However, Iman learned from the authorities of the United Nations that once Afghanistan is recaptured from the Taliban and Al Qaeda terrorists, the Afghan refugees will be repatriated. repatriated. Afghanistan is the last place on earth the American widow would want to return to and raise her six children in that primitive society and among those dangerous Islamic terrorists. Her mind her main objective is to escape from those infernal tents and go to the west. To realize this dream, Iman has to escape from Pakistan. But her dream seemed impossible to achieve without passports and visas. She knew that the Australian embassy in Islamabad would recognize her and again reject her application. So Iman understood that the only way to escape from Pakistan was to smuggle herself and her six children across the Pakistan India border. Crossing into India from Pakistan without official papers would be tantamount to passing through the disputed territory of Jammu and Kashmir province. Passing through the valley of the shadow of death is less dangerous than venturing into that disputed territory between Hindus and Muslims. There are hundreds of Pakistani Islamic terrorist groups fighting for the liberation of Kashmir from India. The most dangerous of these terrorist groups are the fighters of Lakshara Taiba and Jaish Muhammad. Lakshara Taiba is responsible for all the bombings that took place in major cities in India, such as Bombay, New Delhi, Calcutta, and Ahmedabad, killing thousands of innocent Indian people. Although some Afghani families have warned the beautiful foreign mother Iman Atta of what would happen to her if she fled alone with her young without armed persons to protect them. She is determined to take the risk and make her journey to India through the disputed region of Jammu and Kashmir. This route is used by drug traffickers as well as Pakistani terrorists who smuggle themselves into India for suicidal missions. Therefore, anyone caught by the Indian army crossing those areas without official papers is held as a Pakistani spy or a Muslim terrorist. If he escaped death, he would be thrown behind bars indefinitely and tortured day and night until he breathed his last inside the cell. Iman started her journey with very little knowledge of the area and very little money on hand. She needed God's providence to help her afford her burials, escape, and buy food for her six children. Her progress was at a very slow pace and was surrounded by all kinds of difficulties and dangers. Iman and her children have to endure many hardships during their journey through the snowy mountains that have a deadly winter cold. Sometimes they have to hide from the military patrol soldiers and the Indian border with the enemy country Pakistan. During their flight from Afghanistan, Iman and her children did not suffer much and did not face the constant danger they were exposed to on the Pakistan India border. At least at that time, they were accompanied by thousands of displaced Afghani families. But this time they are left alone to continue their uncertain and dangerous exit from Pakistan until they reach the country of India alive. During that dangerous journey, the beautiful blonde white Australian widow Iman Atta was robbed, raped, beaten, and deprived of two of her six children. The details of the sexual abuse and physical suffering that Iman and her six children went through during their journey from Pakistan to India is an unpleasant story to tell because it is horribly painful and makes the eyes, hearts ache for those who hear it due to the graphic details included. Suffice it to say that some of the terrorists of Lakshara Taiba kidnapped the two eldest sons of Mother Iman with the intention of recruiting them into the Islamic Jihad movement for the sake of God. No matter how much she cried and begged the terrorists, she could not stop them from taking two of her male children because they were Muslims. The foreign widow can forget and forgive all the abuse she suffered in the Muslim world, except for the kidnapping of her two sons on the Pakistan India border. Another assault that she could not erase from her memory was the brutal rape she was subjected to by some Indian military soldiers. As soon as the beautiful and sexy blonde Australian girl Iman Atta and her four remaining children with her crossed the border of the Islamic State of Pakistan and entered the land of India, they were picked up by a military truck belonging to the Indian forces patrolling. At first, they accused her of being a Pakistani Muslim spy and put her in their military prison in Kashmir. Then they brutally gang raped her and beat her severely. If Iman Atta had not been a Western blonde foreign woman, they would have killed her to cover up the crime of their repeated gang rape of her white, sexy, and naked body. The American woman and her four children were then imprisoned for a month in a military detention facility before being transferred from Kashmir to a prison in New Delhi. Suspected Muslim woman Iman Atta is now on trial in the capital city of Hindustan on charges of illegally entering the country and spying for Pakistan. Normally, if a person is charged in India with a serious charge such as spying for Pakistan, he or she will be kept in pre-trial detention for 3 to 5 years before being brought to a criminal court and sentenced. After such a long imprisonment, the suspect will not be compensated or receive apology, whether he is convicted or acquitted. The Western foreign widow detained in the investigation cell and her four children would have become like rotten eggs or rotten tomatoes in the filthy Indian jail and would have died like stray dogs had it not been for one of the human rights activists who visited New Delhi's Central Women's Prison and saw them there. She's a Muslim Indian. The Indian human rights activist conducted an interview with the white foreigner Iman Atta, and the interview was later published in a famous newspaper called Times of India. Through the eye-catching newspaper article, the United Nations Refugee Office in New Delhi learns of the case of a white foreign woman and her four young children who are accused of spying for the enemy country Pakistan. Then the UN office appointed a lawyer for the American mother and asked the court to expedite her trial. Accordingly, within 2 months, the foreign woman Ayman Atta was tried and acquitted due to lack of evidence. Then the United Nations office accepted and recognized the refugee status of the American mother Iman Atta, who obtained it while she was in the Swat Valley in Pakistan, and granted had the right to political asylum in India. She told them this orally without showing official papers, and the office was not assigned to contact its counterpart in Pakistan and investigate the matter of the American refugee widow Iman Atta. Moreover, the office helped her rent an apartment and promised to pay her monthly rent and provide financial assistance to her and her four children on a regular basis. In addition, the United Nations office accepted Iman's claim that she is from America without investigating this matter either. Soon after, the UN office referred her case and her children to the US Embassy and requested that they be granted American passports and visas and sent to their home country, the United States of America. The UN office made these arrangements without informing the foreign refugee woman Iman Atta. The Australian widow Irshad Ashamari was surprised when she received a letter from the US Embassy inviting her for an interview. Before she went for the interview, she called the United Nations office, and from them, she learned that they were the ones who referred her case to the US Embassy. The Australian widow Irshad found herself in a difficult situation. She fears that the US Embassy will discover that there is no record of her birth in the United States. She doesn't even know what address to give us the place where she lived when she was in America, as she falsely claimed. As expected, the refugee Iman Atta was unable to prove her claim that she was born and raised in America, even though she had forged an address in the United States of America and told them about it. She thought the Americans would just believe her words without trying to verify them, as the UN officials had done with her before. The US Embassy staff discovered that the address she had given them belonged to an American family that had no children. Also, the name of her father, Frank Peterson, her mother, Mary Peterson, and her maiden name, Suzanne Peterson, before converting to Islam and changing her name to Iman Atta, are not found in that address. As a matter of fact, the embassy obtained these details about her past life from the file she mentioned when she was questioned by female staff of the UN office. When Iman failed to substantiate her claim of being American, her application for resettlement in the United States was denied. However, the US Embassy did not try to take the matter further and prosecute the refugee Iman Atta for lying in her application. However, the US Embassy informed the UN office that Iman is lying about her claim that she is originally an American citizen. Although she had lied in her application, the UN office did not revoke her status as a foreign refugee in India, nor stop her and her children from being supported. Moreover, the UN office did not attempt to find out the identity of the white woman Iman Atta prior to her conversion from Christianity to Islam. UN officials knew that it was a common practice among persecuted Muslim refugees from Africa and Asia to provide false information to be sent for resettlement into Europe, America, Canada, New Zealand, and Australia. Even those illegally displaced people who smuggle themselves in wrecked boats across the Mediterranean Sea will not be imprisoned or bring them back to their home countries when they are caught across the Arabian coast. Rather, they will be treated as persecuted refugees, granted asylum in European countries, placed in refugee camps, and then resettled in America, Canada, New Zealand, or Australia. Chapter 22: Mental Upheavals of the Australian Widow. After her failed experience with the US Embassy, refugee Iman Atta concludes that her chance to go to the West is gone forever, and that she is stuck in India forever with her four children. However, the other serious problem facing Iman was her shocking discovery that one of her rapists among the Indian soldiers had impregnated her. Those evil soldiers beat and gang raped her inside their military base on Pakistan border. She was faced with the bitter choices of either aborting the baby or continuing with the pregnancy. Iman remember when a teenage Christian girl in Australia named Suzanne, she committed adultery and got impregnated by her Buddhist Chinese boyfriend. At that time, her Christian parents prevented her from aborting the child because in Christianity, abortion is tantamount to killing her child. And when she gave birth to the child, she threw him into the hands of her parents as if he was an unwanted bastard. Although her parents had the responsibility of raising her firstborn, Suzanne never tried to contact them and get to know him. She does not even know what name her parents gave her firstborn. But since she converted many years ago from Christian to Islam, changing her name from Suzanne to Irshad, Iman has never been given the right to choose whether or not to abort her child. In addition, in Saudi Arabia, Afghanistan, and Pakistan, abortion is illegal and a crime punishable under Islamic law. However, India is a secular country and abortion is legal. For 90 Indian rupees or less than $2, any doctor can perform an abortion on any married woman. Since she married her Saudi lover Mustafa, the Australian girl is shot not a year has gone by without her having a child. In those days, she became like an animal with no control over her body. Her Arab husband used to force her on bed at any time of the day and fuck her pussy against her wish as a dog fuck its bitch on the street. He even sodomized her in her small ass with his large dick despite her refusal to engage in painful anal sex. He treated her as his infidel carrier or sex slave who had no right to refuse having sex with her Muslim master. The problem of pregnancy drew her attention to an important question. For the first time, she wondered, was she right in her decision to convert from Christianity to Islam? Irshad realized that her conversion was not based on a strong conviction of the truth of Islam and the falsehood of Christianity, as her Muslim husband claimed that the Quran and the Hadith of the Prophet affirm that Christians are deviants and infidels, and that their holy Bible is corrupt. Her decision at the time was emotionally loaded, imposed on her because of her intense love for the immigrant Muslim boy, Mustafa Shambari. At that time, she was blinded by her love for him and was ready to do whatever he wanted her to do. She sacrificed the most loving and caring parents. They might not be Christian father and mother had ever shown such love and care for their children as her parents did to their daughter Suzanne and their son John. Suzanne Peterson abandoned many values and embraced new beliefs that later turned out to be the worst and abrasive worldly laws for women she had ever lived. She even renounced her Christian faith for her love. She left Christ and followed Muhammad and put the Holy Bible behind her back and embraced the Quran. But today she understood that she had left God and started following Satan. Her blind love for her Muslim lover Mustafa did not last long. As soon as she moved to his native land, Saudi Arabia, Irshad discovered that he was not an angel who had fallen from heaven, or a righteous saint as he had seen him in Australia. He became an abusive, controlling, selfish, and cruel husband. In Saudi Arabia and Afghanistan, the relationship was not like that of a lover and a beloved, but rather that of a master with his jariya or sex slave. He raised his hand against her and beat. He even tried to kill her when she questioned the unjust and barbaric teaching of Prophet Muhammad on female genital mutilation. Even her objection and rejection of polygamy and the marriage of minors, which are permitted by the Quran and the Sunnah of the Prophet of Islam, when her husband Mustafa married a minor girl of 14 as a second Muslim wife next to her, led to his anger at her and her second divorce. As a result, after being liberated from those concentration death camps, euphemistically termed training base of jihad, the Australian widow faced a mental turmoil and a major challenge. It is as big as a paradigm shift. It is a fundamental change in basic approach or assumptions. She found herself standing at a crossroads. Should she either continue to follow those inhumane and abusive Sharia laws that governed her life for so many years and gave her husband the right to treat her like an animal and a sex slave, or return to the Lord Jesus Christ she turned her back on and left him for so long? And what about her children? Do they not have the right to continue to follow the religion of their Muslim father and Arab grandfathers? Iman Atta wished her children would be older enough and decide for themselves. As for her, she has already questioned the veracity of Islam. Her suspicions arose during her compulsory confinement in Saudi Arabia and the Mujahideen camps in Afghanistan. She can no longer believe that a prophet who allowed the abuse of women from childhood through female genital mutilation, child marriage, and polygamy allowed in the Quran and Sunnah can be God's loving messenger. He also gave the man the right to beat his woman and deceive his wife by marrying another woman beside her publicly and sleeping with that woman in front of her eyes under the pretext of what is called halal polygamy marriage. So, how can a man who is allowed to sleep with underage girls be prophet of God? If he were a holy man, he would not have taken a 9-year-old girl to bed and raped her at such a young age under the pretext of lawful child marriage in Islam. Accordingly, Ishaq's life in Saudi Arabia and Afghanistan made her see a dark side of Islam that Muslims living in the Western countries always try to hide. Therefore, the Australian widow vowed in God's name that she would spend the rest of her life exposing the deception of these Muslim leaders and religious preachers in the countries of the West and revealing the true Islam that she lived with the true Muslims in Saudi Arabia and the Taliban Mujahideen camps and Al Qaeda terrorist group in Afghanistan. Moreover, refugee Iman Atta made important decisions after discovering that she had been impregnated by one of her rapists among the 3 Indian soldiers. Firstly, the Australian girl believed that all her children were born from adultery due to the cruel rapes her rapist Muslim husband subjected her to. She remembered that her abusive Arab husband forced her to bed whenever he wanted her. Not only did he rape her, but her evil Saudi husband also painfully sodomized her. in the path and Anas and against her wishes. Irshad learned that Islamic law gives him the right to rape her if she refuses to sleep with him. In addition, the Quran in Surah Al-Baqarah 2, verse 223 allows the husband to sodomize his wife by inserting his erect penis into her ass against her will. Commenting on Surah Al-Baqarah 2, verse 223, Moroccan professor Fatima Marnisi said that the Islam allows a Muslim man to have anal sex with his wife against her desire. The verse was revealed when an Ansari woman refused to allow her Muslim husband to have anal sex with her. Fatima Marnisi, 1993, page 145. The woman protesting against her painful sodomy and went to Salama, the Prophet's wife and representative of the woman, and asked her to present the matter to the Messenger of Allah, Muhammad. When Salama inquired about the Prophet, a verse that came down from heaven, it says, "Your women are a tilth for you, so go to your tilth as you wish." This verse has been interpreted as follows: Your women are your field to sow your seed, so approach your field in whatever position you want. Surah Al-Baqarah 2, verse 223. So the Moroccan professor Fatima Manisi mentioned that this verse gives men the right to choose the sexual position they want with their woman during intercourse. And if they wish, the Quran allows them to sodomize their wives in their anus against their wishes. Marnisi, 1993, page 146. The first decision of Iman Atta made was to keep the baby and not to abort and kill it. When she was in Australia, her Christian bearers and the church told her that the Holy Bible considered abortion to be killing of her own child. Irshad understood that a child is innocent even if its mother conceived it through rape. Secondly, Iman Atta decided to renounce Islam and openly revert to Christianity. Her faith in God was revived and solidified on that fateful day when she miraculously escaped from those barbaric villagers who wanted to stone her to death for allegedly killing their honorable village chief, Sheikh Muhammad Ahmed. From that day on, she began to pray to God. For a year, she prayed to the Lord Jesus Christ while she was unjustly imprisoned in Kandahar Central Women's Prison. After her return to the Mujahideen camps, she hid her new faith from those Muslim terrorists for fear of being accused of apostasy and issuing a death sentence against her by cutting off her head with a double-edged sword. However, she realized that such a decision in India might stir up the religious feelings of Muslims, and some of them might decide to kill her as a foreign, apostate white woman. Iman is already known among Afghan, Iranian, and Pakistani refugees as a Muslim woman with a Christian background. Therefore, her openly declaring her conversion to Christianity may make her vulnerable to some terrorist attacks. To avoid any social disgrace and cruel murder, refugee Iman Atta kept mixing with Muslims and pretending to be a Muslima like them. By then, she had made friends with quite a few Muslim women. Iman was surprised to learn that Muslim women in India can go to mosques and pray with men. However, women have a separate section in the mosque which men are not allowed to enter. In Saudi Arabia and Afghanistan, a woman may be executed on the spot if she dares to enter a mosque. Iman remembered the hadith of the Prophet Muhammad in which he told a woman that praying in her home is better than praying in a mosque. On the authoritative Hamid al-Sa'diyah, she said to the Prophet, "O Messenger of God, I would love to pray with you at the mosque." Hearing this, The messenger of God said, I know that you like to pray, you pray with me, but the prayer you pray in your home is better than what you pray in your family's mosque. And your prayer in your family's mosque is better for you than your prayer in the largest congregational mosque. It is mentioned in Sunan Abu Dawud, Musnad Ahmad, and Tafsir al-Tabari. In this hadith, the Prophet Muhammad discouraged women from attending mosques and encouraged them to pray in their homes. Another hadith stated that woman obeyed the command of the Prophet Muhammad and began to pray in a corner of her house until she died. Accordingly, the Australian widow Iman Atta wondered on what religious basis Muslims in Western countries allow women to pray in the mosque. Most likely, they were influenced by the Christian churches, which allows women to come to the church and pray with them. In this regard, Iman understood that the Taliban and Muslims in Arab countries are more obedient to the teaching of their Prophet Muhammad than Muslims living in Western countries and India. Another difference that she noticed is the freedom of movement that Muslim women in India enjoy compared to Muslim women in Saudi Arabia and Afghanistan. Muslim women in India only cover their heads with a very transparent veil, while Muslims women in those countries where she lived are completely covered from head to toe and are rarely allowed out of their homes. Once again, Iman found a religious justification for the restrictions imposed by the Islamic Taliban government and the Saudi people on their women. This led her to conclude that Saudi women and the Taliban's harem are true Muslims, while Muslims women in India and Western countries do not practice the teaching of the Quran and the Hadith of the Prophet Muhammad. The Quran says to Muslim women, and stay in your houses, and do not display yourself like that of the times of ignorance. Surah Al-Ahzab 33, verse 33. Aisha, the wife of the Prophet Muhammad, may God be pleased with her, said, women used to walk around without abayas or jilbabs, and men could see their faces and hands. But when the verse says, O Prophet, tell your wives, daughters, and women of the believers to wear their abayas over themselves, Surah Al-Ahzab 33, verse 59, it was revealed, then it was forbidden, and women were commanded to wear the julbab. Then Ibn Taymiyyah went and said, the julbab is a covering which Ibn Mas'ud interpreted as covering the whole body, including head, face, and hands. Therefore, a woman may not reveal her face and hands in a public places. Ibn Taymiyyah's book on Fatawis, page 110, volume 2, and he also mentioned it in his book Al-Hijab, page 15. The Prophet Muhammad asked his daughter Fatima, what does God require of a woman? She said, she does not see a man, nor does a man see her. The Prophet embraced his daughter and told her, blessed offspring from blessed offspring. After these great discoveries, an important decision in her life, the Australian widow Iman Atta became a different person, as if she was a girl reborn. Chapter 23. Muslim terrorists believe that jihad is the missing imperative obligation of Islam today. The most important finding of the Australian widow Iman Atta is the difference between the Muslims she lived with in the Mujahideen camps and the Muslims she met in the secular state of India. The first group believes in the concept of jihad and avoiding living among the infidels, while the second group does not believe in practicing jihad against the Hindu, Buddhist, and Christian infidels in India. She remembered that she had seen many Muslim families live their comfortable lives in Europe, America, Canada, and Australia, and return to live in those infernal tents of the Mujahideen camps because they knew that the Prophet Muhammad said that he was free from the blood of every Muslim who lived among the infidels. As Irshad also remembered those two Canadian sisters, Shahrazad and Shadia, their loving mother, Shahinaz, and their father Hassan lived their wonderful, luxurious, comfortable, and beautiful lives in Canada and came to live among those Muslim barbarians who brutally murdered them. Once again, Iman found many verses of the Quran and many hadiths of the Prophet Muhammad commanding Muslims to wage jihad against the infidels and to refrain from living among them. She learned that the main goal of modern Islamic terrorists is to revive the forgotten sixth pillar of Islam, which is called jihad. Iman recalled that when she was in Saudi Arabia, her late Arab husband Mustafa made her read a book written by a famous Muslim leader of the notorious terrorist group, the Muslim Brotherhood. The book is titled The Absent Duty or the Imperative Obligation, meaning jihad is the missing important pillar of Islam and is considered the six pillars. In that book, he mentioned that the weakness of the Islamic countries today is due to the abandonment or a forgetfulness of the importance of the jihad war against the infidels. Unless Muslims practice jihad against the infidels, implement Islamic Sharia laws, and restore the rule of the Khalifa or a caliphate state, the Islamic countries will be weak and under the control of the infidel countries of the West forever. The author first asked for the expulsion of Jewish, Christian, and Hindus from Muslim countries. Secondly, he urged Muslims living in non-Muslim countries to return to their Islamic lands. Thirdly, he called for the global declaration of jihad or holy war against the infidels. To prove these three steps to restore authority to Muslims, the author quotes a number of Quranic verses and hadiths of the Prophet Muhammad. And one of the last things that the Messenger of God, may God praise and peace be upon him, said, "May God fight the Jews and Christians. They took the graves of their prophets as place of prostration. So there are no two religions in Arabia." Mauta Malik. Umar ibn al-Khattab narrated that he heard the Messenger of God, may God's prayers and peace be upon him, say, "I will exile the Jewish and Christian from the Arabian Peninsula, and I will not leave anything but Muslims." Sahih Muslim. The Prophet Muhammad also forbade his followers to live in non-Muslim countries. In that he said, "I'm innocent of the blood of any Muslim who lives among the infidels." He said again, "I deny any Muslim who dwells among the polytheists." The Sudanese Muslim scholar Dr. Abdul Hayy Yusuf was asked, "Can a Muslim live in infidel countries like America and Europe?" He replied, "It is not permissible for a Muslim man or a Muslima woman to live in infidel countries like America and Europe." He then quotes the two authentic hadiths above to support his answer. Therefore, Muslims living in Western countries such as America, Canada, Australia, and Europe are either hypocrites or ignorant of the teaching of their Prophet Muhammad. The Prophet of Islam, may God bless him and grant him peace, said, "He who does not fight the infidels or does not order the Muslims to do so will die as the polytheists of Mecca die in their disbelief." Again, he said, "Muslims were the best nation sent out to people. They used to bring them and chains around their necks until they entered Islam." He also said, "Paradise under the shadows of swords." And he said again, God sent me with the sword in my hands, so no one should be worshipped except God alone, and Muhammad is his messenger. He also said, whoever among you sees an evil, let him change it with his own hand. Quranic verses on the necessity of jihad war. There are about 458 verses of the Quran ordering Muslims to wage jihad in the way of God to spread Islam with violence between the infidels and polytheists, but the following are only a few of them. When the sacred months have passed, then kill the idolaters wherever you find them, disgrace them, and besiege them, and lie in wait for them in every ambush. If they repented and established the prayer and paid the zakat, so let them go their way. Indeed, Allah is forgiven. Surah Al-Tawbah 9 verse 5. This verse is known among Muslim scholars as the verse of the sword and the mother of abrogators. It abrogated and cancelled the legal authority of 124 verses from the Holy Quran. After this verse was revealed, Islam became obligatory for everyone. Anyone who refuses to convert to Islam is supposed to be killed by the Muslim Mujahideen, and his wife, children, and other property should be taken as spoils of war and distributed to the Mujahideen. Today, ISIS fighters have implemented this Quranic injunction, conquering the Iraqi Yazidis, killing their men, raping their women, taking their women and children as slaves or captives and prisoners of war, and selling them in the slave markets of Iraq and Syria. Fight those who do not believe in God or the last day, who do not forbid what God and his messenger have forbidden, and who do not follow the religions of truth from God. Among the Christian and Jewish, those who have been given the book, so that they may bear the tribute out of hand while being humbled. Surah Al-Tawbah 9 verse 29. This verse commands Muslims to kill Christians and Jews if they refuse to renounce their religions and accept Islam or obey tribute to them, which is called jizya, and live among them as humiliated second-class citizens in their homeland that was invaded and occupied by Muslims at the point of the sword. To understand the situation of the defeated Christians under the Islamic Caliphate, please read the Unjust Covenant or the Treaty of Umar, the second Caliph, Umar ibn al-Khattab, imposed on Christians of the Levant. All you who have believed, fight those of the disbelievers who come close to you, that is the closest, then the closest of them, and let them find harshness in you, that is, be harsh with them, and know that God is with the righteous. Surah Al-Tawbah 9, verse 123. So when you meet those who disbelieve, smite the necks until when you have suffocated them, then tighten the chains of them, so either from us after or as a ransom until put down the burdens of war. And if God will it, he would have won victory over them, but that he might test one with another, and those who were killed in the battle of God will not mislead their deeds. Surah Muhammad 47 verse 4. Some hadiths of the Prophet on jihad. The Messenger of God said, I've been commanded by Allah to fight people until they testify that no one worship but God and that Muhammad is the messenger of God. Pray our prayers and believe the obligatory, and if they do so, they save their lives and property from me except for the provisions of Islamic law, and their accounts are calculated by God. Sahih al-Bukhari. On the authority of Abu Hurairah that he heard the messenger of God, may God's prayers and peace be upon him, say, I have been commanded to fight people until they testify that there is no God but Allah, and believe in me, I am the messenger and in all that I have come to do. And if they do so, their blood and wealth are granted protection from me, except in cases justified by law, and their affairs are with God. Sahih Muslim. The Prophet, may God's prayers and peace be upon him, said, God commanded me to fight people until they testify that there is no God but Allah and that Muhammad is his servant and messenger, and they face our Qibla and eat what we like, and they slaughtered and prayed like us. If they do that, their lives and money are forbidden to us except for what is obligatory for them. They will have the same rights as Muslims, and they will have the same responsibilities as Muslims. Sunan Abu Dawud. A man came to the Prophet and asked, a man fights for the spoils of war, another fights for fame, and a third fights for ostentation. The Prophet, may God bless him and grant him peace, said, he who fights for the word of God Almighty fights in the cause of God. This hadith is mentioned in Sahih al-Bukhari and Sahih Muslim. So it is called agreed upon, and it is the highest form of authenticity. The Messenger of God said, God guarantees whoever strives in his affairs, and there is no motive for rebellion except for jihad in his affairs and faith in his word. He will enter paradise if he is martyred, or return him to his country, his abode from where he came out with his reward and booty. Sahih al-Bukhari. On the authority of Abu Hurairah, may God be pleased with him, he said, God pleased to whoever leaves his house to fight for his cause and prove the truth of his word. Either God will admit him to heaven or return him to the house from which he came out with his reward and spoils. Sahih Muslim. The Messenger of God said, know that paradise is under the shadows of swords. This hadith is also mentioned in Sahih al-Bukhari and Sahih Muslim, and that is why it is called the hadith agreed upon. On the authority of Jabir, that a man said, O Messenger of God, where would I be if I was killed? He said, in heaven. The man threw the dates in his hand and fought until he was killed. Sahih Muslim. On the authority of Abu Hurairah, that the Messenger of God, may God prayers and peace be upon him, said, whoever dies without fighting for the sake of God in jihad and does not show a desire for jihad, he died a hypocritical death. Sahih Muslim. Based on these Quranic verses and hadith, Islam teaches the importance of jihad, war against infidels, and that religion should be spread by the sword. Moreover, the Prophet Muhammad forbids his followers to live in the lands of infidels. Today, the infidel countries are like France, Germany, Spain, Italy, Canada, Australia, India, China, Israel, Brazil, United Kingdom, and the USA, among other countries in the world. Chapter 24. Resettlement of Muslim migrants in the West. According to the United Nations, resettlement is the transfer of refugees from a country of asylum to another country that has agreed to accept them and eventually grant them permanent living. Although the Australian widow Iman Atta has decided to keep the child she conceived through rape, she is determined to bring to justice those Indian soldiers who abused, beat, and gang raped her. She understood that India is a secular country and that all people living on its territory are entitled to equal protection under the law. Consequently, Iman informed her lawyer of her pregnancy and her desire to sue those who raped her and impregnated her among the Indian soldiers. Her lawyer accepted the case but advised her to wait until she had given birth. The surrogate lawyer did not want the perpetrators to deny their crimes. Through DNA, the court will be able to identify the Indian soldier who impregnated the white foreign woman Iman Atta through rape, and from him, the police will reach the other accomplices to the crime. She also provided her lawyer with accurate descriptions of the three soldiers who raped her while she was in military detention in Kashmir. Iman is still bleeding in her heart, not because of the brutal rape she suffered by the heartless Indian border soldiers, but because of her two sons who were taken from her by Pakistani terrorists. She brought her children's abduction case before the UN office and her lawyer and begged them to do something to get her sons back. Her lawyer informed her that he was powerless in the case of her two kidnapped sons. However, the UN Indian office referred the case to the counterpart UN office in Pakistan and requested them to forward the complaint to the border police authority. Again, Iman gave a full description of those who kidnapped her two sons. A few months later, the gang-raped Australian widow Iman Atta gave birth to twin sons. Soon after their birth, her lawyer filed a lawsuit in a criminal court in New Delhi against those three evil soldiers who raped his client and impregnated her in the Indian-Pakistani border. The media picked up the news and presented it to the public. It became shocking and breaking news across the capital city. Soon it became known all over the major cities of India like Bombay, Calcutta, Madras, etc. She was described by the media as a former American convert to Islam who became an Afghani citizen who was allegedly gang raped and impregnated by the Indian army. Whoever impregnated her as she claimed was a soldier on the Indo-Pakistani border. She said that her Saudi Muslim husband was killed in the jihad war against the infidels during the NATO invasion of Afghanistan, and she did not live with him or sleep with him for more than a year. So she is sure that her pregnancy is caused by one of her rapists and not her late husband. Iman's case is not limited to the police, but the government of India has taken the matter very seriously and has demanded a thorough investigation into the allegation. Preliminary investigations confirmed the complaint of the white Muslim widow Iman Atta that she was arrested and detained on charges of spying for Pakistan and entering the country illegally without official papers. She was held for a while in a military detention on the border before being transferred to a woman's prison in New Delhi with her four Muslim children. Later, the court in the capital of India found her not guilty and acquitted her. Despite that, the military base denied the accusation of rape and physical assault. However, through DNA testing conducted on the twins, the police were able to identify the Indian soldier who raped and impregnated the white foreign woman Iman Atta. At first, the soldier claimed that Iman had agreed to sleep with him of her own accord. When the police tortured him in their third-degree harsh interrogation method, the rapist Indian soldier confessed to his heinous crime and revealed the identity of the other two military officers who participated in the gang rape. The three military officers were forced to step down from their post and transferred to the city of New Delhi to face the consequences of their heinous crimes. They were soon found guilty by a criminal court and sentenced to 10 years in prison. They were also dismissed from their military posts and prohibited from any future government service. Although her rapists were arrested and convicted, the Pakistani police were unable to locate Iman's two kidnapped sons, nor was she able to locate their abductors. However, the issue of the white woman caught the attention of the foreign delegates in New Delhi. The question which puzzled these delegates and even the central government of New Delhi was, since Iman Atta is an American citizen, why is she still a refugee in India? The mystery became even more confusing when the US Embassy reported in the media that Iman Atta could not substantiate her claim to be an American citizen. Fortunately, the investigation into her hidden secret did not go beyond the US Embassy. Nevertheless, the case of the white refugee and her six children put pressure on the UN office in New Delhi, accordingly accelerating their resettlement to a developed industrial country in the first world in the West. Her Muslim legal representative in the United Nations office put constant pressure on the office and demanded that Iman Atta and her six children be sent for resettlement in a rich Western country so that they could live a better life than in India. She said that what refugee Iman Atta and her six children received from the United Nations office as financial aid hardly meets their daily needs in a large city like New Delhi, which has a very high standard of living. Besides, India will never give them citizenship no matter how long they stay in the country. In addition, India has a law that prevents foreigners from working in the country. This limitation is caused by the population explosions of the poverty of the country due to the lack of natural resources. Thousands of Indian migrate annually to various world countries to escape from their miserable conditions. The Muslim legal representatives' request eventually persuaded the UN office and led it to refer the case of the American refugee widow Iman Atta and her six children to the Canadian embassy and the Australian embassy. A few months later, the white foreign refugee mother received a letter of invitation for an interview from the Canadian embassy. When Iman received the letter from the embassy, she had already spent 1 year living as a refugee with her children in India. During this year, she maintained close relations with some Afghani and Pakistani refugee families. She continued to follow the Islamic faith and practice all of its rites, but in her heart, she longed for a time when she would not need to hide her apostasy. She also received emotional and social support from the Muslim community in New Delhi. She even named her new twin sons Hassan and Hussein. In fact, Iman had six children with her three daughters, Khadija, Zainab, and Maryam, and three sons, Usman, Hassan, and Hussein. Her two kidnapped sons are Abu Bakr and Umar. Her eldest daughter, Aisha, was kidnapped, raped, and imprisoned by Mullah Sheikh Muhammad Abu Hamid, who took her away from her mother under the pretext of Islamic child marriage. All these children were registered with their mother at the United Nations office as Muslims. Her interview with the Canadian embassy went well, and she was informed the same day that she and her six children had been accepted for resettlement to Canada. Her interviewer happened to be an Indian lady, so she didn't even bother to ask her about her country of origin. It was the happiest day of her life when she was told she has been granted resettlement in Canada. For many years, her life knew nothing but suffering and persecution. In Saudi Arabia, she lived with the worst of the Arab barbarians. And in Afghanistan, she lived among the notorious criminals and bloodthirsty terrorists of the Taliban and Al Qaeda. Iman could not express her happiness in words when she finally knew that she was free to have to leave the said world behind with all its injustice and misery and travel to the first world where she was born of honor and raised by loving Christian parents. Her travel processing took another month before she finally obtained emergency travel documents from the Red Cross office in New Delhi, immigrant visas, and free airline tickets from the Canadian Embassy. At, at least 7 Muslim families with their many children came to Indira Gandhi International Airport in India's capital, New Delhi, to bid farewell to the white foreign refugee woman Iman Atta and her 6 children. All Muslims in the said world wish to be like them as they are, the lucky immigrants to the promised land, the country of the Christian infidels, Canada, which overflows with milk, honey, and abundant money that is scattered in the streets like the garbage that is everywhere in India, like flies in the billions during the day and mosquitoes in the millions at night. Iman Atta really cried from her heart when she said goodbye to her Muslim friends in India. The family of American Muslim refugee widow flew from Indira Gandhi International Airport in the capital of India to Heathrow International Airport in London, United Kingdom, and finally landed at Toronto International Airport in the Promised Land, Canada. At the airport, some representatives of the Toronto Immigration Office welcomed the Muslim family. The funniest thing that happened when they arrived was when Canadian immigration representatives came to the international airport with an Arabic translator. According to the information received by the Canadian Immigration Office, the family members are Saudi Muslim refugees who speak only Arabic. The confusion came as a result of the interview conducted by refugee Iman Atta with an Indian woman employed by the Canadian Embassy. During the interview, Iman told the interviewer that Iman told the interviewee that her late husband. During the interview, Iman told the lady who interviewed her that her late husband was a Saudi Muslim man who was killed during the US UK led NATO air strikes on Afghanistan. So the Indian lady concluded that the beautiful white woman is also Saudi Muslima. Canadian immigration officials were very surprised to discover that the blunt Muslim woman, Iman Atta, could speak English as fluently as any of them. They met Western white Muslim women who arrived from Asian and European countries with a Muslim majority, such as Kazakhstan, Kyrgyzstan, Tajikistan, Turkmenistan, Uzbekistan, Azerbaijan, and the Republic of Bosnia and Herzegovina, who could not speak a single word of English. Most of them speak Russian and other local languages. The newly arrived Muslim family members were then transferred from the international airport to a space specifically designed to accommodate refugee immigrants resettled in Toronto. One white foreign refugee, Iman Atta, arrived at the guest house. She felt she had landed in either an Arab homeland or another Muslim country. Almost every immigrant in that place is an Arab, and if he or she is not an Arab, he or she is at least a Muslim man or a Muslima woman. Muslim refugee immigrant women wear Islamic abayas over their bodies, head scarves covering their heads, and all males have meter long broom like beards and wear robes that are like nightgowns for Western women. Some Asian and Arab Muslim women wear the burqa, also known as the niqab, which makes them look like scary black ghosts. What surprised and frightened the white Western foreign woman was the plain fact that these Muslim immigrants resettling Canada appeared to be more religious than those she left behind in India. The newly arrived white Muslim woman was approached by some Arab immigrant woman and tried to find out what language she spoke. When they discovered that she could communicate well in Arabic, they became her friends from day one. Iman's main concern stemmed from the fear of being identified by this Arab and Afghani Muslim woman. She doesn't want anyone to know who she is and what her late Saudi husband did in New York on September 11, 2001. She wants to keep lying about her country of origin and her real name. So during her short stay at the guest house, the frightened white woman Iman Atta kept her movement to a minimum. Fortunately, the woman who approached her on the day of her arrival believed everything she told them about her life. 2 weeks later, Atta's family was moved into an apartment in a building with many resettled Muslim immigrant residents. The white woman Iman Atta was deeply shocked when she saw the four-bedroom apartment that had been given to her and her children. She wept when she remembered the miserable condition in which she, her 7 children, and her late Arab husband lived in those infernal Mujahideen camps in the demonic kingdom of Tartarus, Afghanistan. The tent in which the white woman is shot her 7 Muslim children and her Arab husband Mustafa lived for 5 years is not acceptable in Canada to house a single bed dog. In fact, animals are treated better in the Western countries than humans in the third world and many Muslim countries. In those dark years, the 9 of them were stuffed in the small tent like eggs in a carton box or sardines in a tin. In addition to the huge and beautiful apartment that the Ontario government granted to the Atta Muslim immigrant family to live in for free, the Canadian Immigration Office promised to meet the needs of the large family for a year. Iman learned that her late Saudi husband, Mustafa Al Shammari, his mother, and his brothers and sisters were treated in Australia in the same kind way that they are now received with her 6 children in Canada. She could not believe that a person who had been treated with such good kindness and generosity and love would turn around and kill those who showed him nothing but love. Although she had lived among Islamic terrorists for a long time, Irshad al-Shammari could not understand their mentalities. She could not understand the driving force behind the gross hatred that the Muslim Mujahideen feel towards those they call infidels, brothers of monkeys and pigs. Why do they hate infidels? This has been the question that has puzzled her for the past 10 years that she has spent in Saudi Arabia, Afghanistan, and India. Iman refused to believe the arguments of some Westerners that, due to poverty and ignorance, radical Muslims blame the West. During her stay in Saudi Arabia, She found that the Muslim people are richer than many families in the West. And in the Mujahideen camps, she knew that some of these fighters were university graduates. Even her late Arab husband, Mustafa, had completed 2 years at the University of Sydney, and so no one could call him an ignoramus. Besides, the founder of those Mujahideen camps, Osama bin Laden, was a university graduate, civil engineer, and a wealthy business tycoon before he left everything and chose to live in the poorest country in the world, like Afghanistan, and establish a base for jihad there. His first deputy, Iman al-Zawahri, was a medical doctor and thus a university graduate from one of the best Egyptian universities. Moreover, the leader of the Islamic Caliphate in Syria and Iraq, Abu Bakr al-Baghdadi, holds a PhD in Islamic jurisprudence and Sharia. Therefore, no one can describe such a famous Muslim caliph who revived the Islamic Caliphate as an ignorant or uneducated man. The ISIS groups is a revival of the traditional Islamic Caliphate. It is 100 times more evil and dangerous than the terrorist groups of Al Qaeda and Taliban. In fact, the Islamic State Caliphate, ISIS, is the bastard child of Al Qaeda. The Australian widow Irshad Shammari understood the motive behind the abhorrent hatred of the Mujahideen against the infidels from the example of her husband, the Arabic Muslim Mujahid Mustafa, who died so that his body was burned to ashes in New York City in his jihad against the infidels. The only reason that motivated these mujahideen to hate the infidels and love to kill them was the inflammatory verses of the Quran and the hadith of the Prophet Muhammad that called for jihad against the so-called enemies of Allah and his Prophet and the Muslims, those who are called impure infidels in Islam. The Quran commands the Prophet Muhammad, saying to him, O Prophet, instigate the believers to fight. If 20 of you are patient, they will defeat 200. And if there are 100 of you, they defeat 1,000 of those who disbelieve because they are a people who do not understand. It is not for a prophet to have prisoners of war until he is sickening the earth with blood. You want the goods of this world, and God wants the hereafter. And God is mighty. He is wise. Surah Al-Anfal 8, verse 65 and 66 and 67. That is why the alleged messenger of God was inciting his group to fight on their side and to confront the enemy among the infidels, as he said to his Mujahideen companions on the day of the Battle of Badr. When the polities in their numbers and acumen came, arise to a paradise as wide as the heavens and the earth. The Quran calls Jews and Christians infidels as well as brothers of apes and bigs. Chapter 25. Betrayal of the American widow by another Muslim woman. The white American immigrant Iman Atta, who recently arrived in Canada as a Muslim refugee, was treated differently from other Muslim refugee immigrants resettled in Toronto. The immigration authority learned that she had an excellent command of English as well as French. Besides, she can speak both Arabic and Afghani languages. Therefore, the Toronto Immigration Office considered her a valuable asset and would help a lot. The office offered her a job as a translator, which Iman Atta gladly accepted. Usually, most refugee migrants, especially females, are illiterate and ignorant and have no knowledge of English and a little knowledge of the world. The government of Canada must spend a lot of money and time to teach them English as a second language. In addition, since many of them came from abusive societies and dictatorial regimes, the immigration office has to offer them orientation courses to teach them about Canadian laws and values. Sometimes a Western way of life may clash with the religious values of these Muslim immigrants. In this case, the latter values will be preferred by them over the previous ones. Many of them, even the greatest of them, do not accept Western secular values and laws that are inconsistent with the laws of Islamic Sharia. A few months after arriving in Canada, resettled immigrant Iman Atta was promoted to the position of English teacher at the Bureau of Immigration. Her main duty is to teach English to new immigrants. Most of her students are immigrants from Arab and Islamic countries. Furthermore, Iman continued her previous position as an interpreter for the immigration office. These two positions make her earn a very high salary. The rapid success and promotion of the white refugee woman Iman Atta in Canada was not appreciated by all immigrant women in Toronto. Some Muslim women desired and wished that the white Muslim woman Iman would be like any one of them. It is a common phenomenon in the third world that most people feel very jealous of others, even if they are their relatives, friends, and neighbors. If good things happen to their neighbors, it will make them very sad. And if bad things happen to their friends and relatives, it will make them very happy. Accordingly, the majority of immigrants settled in Western countries are jealous, envious, selfish, harmful, and destructive to those around them, especially those of the same motherland, ethnicity, and religion. So there is a Muslim immigrant woman who tries to stop Iman's advances at the immigration office. That same woman is also an employee of the Canadian Immigration Office in Toronto. She worked as a translator for 5 years before Iman came. Because of her poor performance, she remained in this position forever. However, when she saw that Iman was doing well in her first position, and within 6 months she was promoted to a high position as a teacher, the woman could not control her anger and envy. She accused the office of racial discrimination against her because she's a black woman from Sudan and Iman Atta is a white woman from America. She went so far as to file a complaint with the staff union against the immigration office. When the union investigated the complaint, it found it to be unfounded and motivated by sheer unwarranted jealousy. Therefore, her complaint was dismissed and she remained in the same position and monthly salary as before her complaint. Although the female employee who filed the complaint is originally a Muslim woman who immigrated from the Islamic country of Sudan, she has nothing to do with Islam. She smokes cigarettes, drinks hookah or shisha openly, and has a boyfriend. There is a rumor that she secretly drank alcohol with her lover. The rumor added that her Sudanese Muslim husband left her because of her inappropriate behavior and learned that she was cheating on him with another immigrant man. The husband moved to Vancouver City and left her with his young daughter without divorcing her. Other immigrants fear her because her boyfriend is a senior RCMP officer. He is a Canadian Muslim, but originated from Pakistan, immigrated to Canada as a refugee. When his immigrant family brought him to Canada, he was a 6-year-old boy. Later, he became a Canadian citizen, and when he grew up, he joined the police force. Hala is the name of the Muslim woman who coveted Iman's position and tried to wrest it from her by hook and crook, as well as with the help of the employees syndicate, but she failed miserably. Howbeit, when Hala failed in the legal ways, she decided to play a dirty game through her boyfriend, who is a police officer in the RCMB. Hala did not know anything about the white refugee Muslim woman Iman Atta except for the little information the immigration office received from the Canadian embassy in New Delhi, in India. According to this information, Iman Atta was married to a Saudi man and had 7 children with him. This Arab husband died during NATO air strikes led by the US and UK air forces in Afghanistan. Because of the war on terror, Iman, like many Afghani families, fled with their children to Pakistan and eventually made her way to India. Then the white woman Iman and her children became refugees in New Delhi for over a year and finally migrated for resettlement in Canada. The difficult question that puzzled Hala and the other immigration officials is that before the white woman Iman Atta married her late Saudi husband, what was her place of birth? From day one, Hala knew Iman was a white woman who could speak both English and French fluently. These are the two main languages in Canada, and knowing them gives the citizen or immigrant a great privilege. Therefore, a man cannot be a white woman like one of these white Muslim women who came from the former Muslim countries of the Soviet Union. Hala, the jealous Muslima woman, shared with her boyfriend, who is a senior officer in the Canadian police, the problem she faces in her workplace and her anger at the white woman who held the position she expected to get. From experience, Hala knew that most immigrant women from Afghanistan had some ties to the Taliban terrorist movement and the Arab Mujahideen. However, she did not raise any concerns about this Muslim immigrant woman until it was assumed that the white immigrant woman, Iman, had stolen her expected position. So Hala instigated her boyfriend in Canadian RCMB and made him investigate the case of Iman Atta. She asked him to find out what the white American foreigner and her late Saudi husband used to do in the city of Kandahar and what made them move from the richest country in the Muslim world, Saudi Arabia, to the poorest country in the said world, Afghanistan. As a result of that secret, premeditated plot, the white woman Iman Atta was summoned for questioning by the Royal Canadian Mounted Police. The police confronted her with many questions about her late husband and her country of origin. Iman continued to lie about her real name and former homeland. She told the police that she was originally American and Catholic Christian and later converted to Islam and married a young Saudi man through a long love affair. She claimed he was her classmate at college. Shortly after their marriage, she moved with her Arab husband to his native Saudi Arabia. She also said that she lived for 3 years with her husband in his country. During this period, her husband worked in the field of import and export. Her husband's business led him and his family to move to Afghanistan. Then the family lived in Kandahar city for 5 years. Iman concluded her statement by saying that her good Muslim husband was killed by mistake when American and British planes bombarded bombed some of Afghanistan's major cities. When her husband was killed, she moved with her six children to Pakistan and then made her way to India, where she was granted refugee status and eventually migrated to Canada for resettlement. The RCMB could not believe that a wealthy Saudi businessman would choose to leave a rich country like Saudi Arabia and move to a poor country like Afghanistan to do import and export business. However, the police released the suspected white woman Iman Atta and decided to verify her claim of being an American citizen before she converted to Islam and married her late Saudi husband, Mustafa Atta. The police were interested in continuing the investigation into Iman because the reason she gave for immigrating to Canada rather than returning to her native America did not make sense. When they asked her why she preferred to immigrate to Canada and not return to America, she said that she had no proof of her American citizenship. She lost her she lost her American passport while fleeing Afghanistan with her children. The first step the RCMP took was refer the case of Iman Atta to the Federal Bureau of Investigation in the United States of America and asked them to verify her claim that she is an American citizen. All the information Iman provided about her American family, address, college, and child did not match anything in the United States. Furthermore, the FBI was unable to find any record of an American woman married to a Saudi man by the name of Mustafa Atta and subsequently traveling with him to his country. The U.S. Federal Bureau of Investigation in New York prepared a report and sent it to the RCMP in Toronto. The result of that report showed that Iman Atta lied in her claim that she was American. Once police in Toronto received the FBI report, the RCMP picked up the white Muslim immigrant woman Iman Atta again from her workplace. This time she was arrested on charges of lying in her claim to be American and providing false information about herself to the Canadian Embassy in India. The RCMP has already contacted the Canadian Embassy in New Delhi and obtained a copy of her file. When the police confronted her with her lies, Iman was forced to reveal part of her hidden life. She admitted that she lied in the interviews with the United Nations office and the Canadian Embassy while she was in India. She then informed the police that she was born and raised in Sydney, Australia. This time she provided accurate information about her family and Australian address. However, the RCMP kept her in custody until her new claim to be an Australian citizen was verified. Once again, the Canadian police have referred her case to the Sydney police and have asked the Australian police to investigate Suzanne Peterson's allegation. This time, Sydney police were able to validate her claim through her Christian family. Suzanne's parents admitted that they had a Christian daughter, Suzanne Peterson, who later converted to Islam and married a Muslim Saudi immigrant student. Then she cut off all ties with her family. Her parents said the last information they heard about her was that she had moved with her Muslim husband to Saudi Arabia. After that, the parents did not know anything about their daughter. However, the Australian police were able to obtain additional information about Suzanne, who left Christianity and converted to Islam, and her Saudi Muslim husband, Mustafa, from other sources, such as the Imam of the mosque in Sydney, who conducted their marriage, and the college that the couple used to attend before leaving the country. This second piece of information began to reveal some hidden secrets in the life of the Muslim immigrant woman Iman Atta. Firstly, the police learned that the man Suzanne married was Mustafa al-Shammari, not Mustafa Atta. Secondly, after converting to Islam and marrying, Suzanne changed her name to Irshad, not Iman. Sydney police by saying, concluded its report by saying, the Australian wife Irshad and her Muslim husband Mustafa left Australia 11 years ago and moved to Saudi Arabia. The RCMP then referred the case of Iman and her late husband to the CIA, asking them for information regarding their stay in Saudi Arabia and the reason they moved to Afghanistan under Taliban regime. Moreover, the Toronto police wanted to know what Mustafa al-Shammari was doing in Afghanistan. Once the CIA received a request from the Canadian Mounted Police, the mystery that puzzled them for over a year began to unravel. According to a secret report from the Saudi police, Mustafa Shammari is one of the 19 Arab Muslim terrorists who carried out the cowardly terrorist attacks on the World Trade Center on September 11, 2001, and other places in America. The report revealed that the terrorist Mustafa had traveled to the United States of America under supervision, a forged identity for a Saudi man named Walid al-Shahri. In addition, the CIA also obtained information from the Saudi Criminal Investigation Department on Mustafa Shammari and his family. According to the information, the Saudi husband Mustafa and his Australian wife Irshad were among the Muslim extremists who moved from Saudi Arabia to Afghanistan and joined the Mujahideen camps, founded and directed by the notorious Muslim terrorist leader Osama bin Laden. Later, Mustafa was sent to America with a group of Muslim terrorists to learn to fly. 2 years later, Mustafa participated in the hijacking of 4 domestic American airliners and directed them at targets in New York and elsewhere, killing 3,000 innocent Americans in one day. Accordingly, the white Muslim immigrant woman Irshad Shambari became a figure of interest to the CIA more than the RCMP. Therefore, the CIA in New York demanded that the accused, Irshad Shambari, be handed over to them for further interrogations. The American police concealed from the Royal Canadian Mounted Police their discovery of Irshad's true identity and what her cowardly Muslim terrorist husband Mustafa had done to the American people. The RCMP believed the CIA and transported the Australian Muslim immigrant woman to New York. As soon as her plane arrived at a private airport in New York, the CIA transferred the Muslim terrorist woman Irshad Shammari to a military plane and shipped her over to the Guantanamo Bay Detention Center for Muslim terrorists. The CIA did not even allow her feet to touch any American soil and discredit it. Therefore, Irshad Mustafa Shammari is the first female Muslim terrorist suspect to be sent to Guantanamo Bay. The arrest of the wife of one of the 19 Muslim terrorists responsible for killing 3,000 innocent Americans raised a red flag around the world. In America, the public appreciated the work of the CIA and commended the agency for thwarting yet another terrorist plot against the innocents of Canada. In Australia, the citizens of Sydney were shocked to learn that the wife of one of the terrorists who attacked the World Trade Center in New York and killed thousands of innocents was an Australian citizen born and raised in that great cosmopolitan city. In Canada, people were astonished to learn that the white immigrant Muslim woman who had lived and worked among them for over a year in the cosmopolitan city of Toronto was the wife of such a dangerous and notorious terrorist. The public blamed the RCMP intelligence for failing to prevent such a, a white terrorist foreign Muslim woman from migrating to the country.